Jimmy and his family were heading out from the big city where they lived to his parents' home in the country for a holiday visit. And as he went out, he thought, you know, my daughter, Claire, has never seen the stars in the sky, because in the city that you could never see it. So he looked forward to their first evening there when he took little Claire for a walk down the country road from the family home and waited to see how long it would take. And it didn't take very long for her to look up into the sky and say, "Daddy, Daddy, look, somebody drew dots in the sky." And he said, "Sweetheart, those are stars that I've been telling you about. It's the first time you can actually see them because it's so dark here in the country." She said, "Well, does it make a design? Does it mean something? Can you draw lines from the dots?" And he said, "Well, not really. But what I think those stars mean are God's hopes for your future. God has so many hopes for you and so many blessings to give you that you can't even count them, like the stars in the sky tonight." And she said, "So that's what hope looks like. I always wanted to know." Indeed, I think she was right. If we look into the heavens and see all the stars that God has created, all the many possibilities that are part of our life, our calling, we then want to respond with gratitude and a generous heart for the talents God has given us. And we hear that in the parable today. The talent, interestingly enough, was a measure of money. But the play on words, of course, is the many gifts God has given us, talents that are within us. And notice Jesus is very generous. He invests in his stewards. He, the landowner, the one who owns the entire earth, he, our Lord, our God, has invested in us in various and sundry ways according to our ability. And the question is, what are we going to do with those gifts? Will we, like the lazy servant, just bury the talents, not use them, or multiply them for the good of others? Let me tell you about a man I met some years ago named Elias Shakur at a conference, who told us how, growing up in Galilee, he saw the problem, the enmity in the 60s, way back then, between Christians, Jews, and Muslims. And he prayed for an inspiration on how he could actually make a difference. Well, he went on, studied for the priesthood, was ordained, and eventually became the Archbishop of Galilee, northern Israel. And he sought a way to build a school that would be open to all three, Christians, Jews, and Muslims, because he knew if he could have them educated together, see their common humanity together, they might be able to find a way to live together in peace. But he was met with every obstacle by the government. Permits denied, funding denied, everything he sought denied. But he wouldn't give up. Archbishop Shakur decided at that time that the United States was working on a peace initiative in Israel, so he was going to come to the U.S., and he did. He went to the halls of Congress, denied. He tried to get into the Secretary of State, Jim Baker, couldn't even get in. Didn't give up. He actually somehow found out the residence of the Bakers, and he went to the house of Jim Baker. He knocked at the door of the home. Now, it just so happened, Mrs. Baker, Susan Baker, was having a women's Bible study at her house. She was a devout Christian, and I guess she presumed it was another one of the ladies. So she went to the door, opened the door, and there is this bishop in all of his finery standing at her door, and she's rather amazed, and she says, "Yes?" He says, "I am here to see Jim Baker." She said, "Well, I'm sorry, but that's my husband. He's not here. He's at his office." "Well, that's all right. I'll talk to you." "Oh, well, I'm sorry, but I have a women's Bible study, and who are you? He said, I am the man from Galilee. And then he said, a Bible study? What language are you studying the Bible in? She said, in English. He said, well, I know it in the original Hebrew and the Greek, so I'll come and explain it to you all. Thank you. And he walked in. Archbishop Shakur became a friend of the Baker family from that moment on. And yes, Jim Baker did meet with him officially. Yes, they made initiatives, and somehow Israel granted the permits and the needed funding so that he could build a school for Palestinians, Christians, Jews, Israelis, and Muslims all together. And that school has had its impact. You see, he would not give up on the dream. He used his talents for the good of others. And the question is, will we do the same? Yes, there are plenty of problems still in Israel, but those who've gone to that school have experienced a change in their lives. Some of you, I believe, were involved in the Ulster Project some years ago, where children from Ireland, both Catholic and Protestant, were brought over to the U.S., lived in homes together for summer projects, and learned how to be together in peace. And look at the difference it's made in the history of Ireland. And we can go on and on. But the question is not what are other people doing? The question is, what are you doing? What am I doing to make a difference? Recently, I heard a conference by Dr. Peter Kleponis, who is a Catholic, a psychologist, who's been doing a lot of research on the family. We hear about the family today in the first reading. Notice it says that the husband of a worthy wife gives his heart to her. And the actual word there is entrusts his heart. Just as in the gospel, the master entrusts the talents to the stewards, so in the family, the husband entrusts his heart to the wife. But you and I know very well that we've had a great deal of problems in the family life here in our country and around the world. In fact, the statistics are chilling. And so Kleponis did his research to see what on earth can we do to turn this around. And his statistical surveys and research indicated something very interesting, something maybe you hadn't realized, or perhaps you have. That one of the greatest enemies of the family today, of husbands and wives, parents and children, is in the palm of your hands. It's in electronics. How many people find themselves in the home talking to someone who's got his or her face looking down into the palm of the hand? How many people, when a husband is trying to communicate with the wife or the wife to the husband, are distracted by electronic devices in the palm of the hand or on the screen of a laptop? How many people have so many friends on the internet that they never actually talk to person, face to face, eye to eye, that are walking around with deep loneliness? While the irony of communication and mass communication and electronics is that it was supposed to make us better connected, the irony is that in a serious way, we are less connected, humanly speaking, person to person. The heart has been entrusted to an electronic device. And how distracted we are, so distracted that the family is weakening. And here is where the tempter comes in once he has us hooked electronically with the darkness of pornographic images. His statistics indicate that it is a more pervasive evil in our homes, in our hearts, than alcohol and drug addiction has been. And when I first heard this at his conference, I thought that might be an exaggeration. But he pointed out that it is an immediate evil. It can be accessed anywhere at any time. It's cheaper than drugs and alcohol, at least in the beginning. And it goes to the brain swiftly, almost immediately. The effects on children is outrageous. It's causing mental distress in our young people like never before, as well as in our adults. But we as adults need to do something, and Dr. Kleponis did. He's developed a website called Integrity Restored, where he reveals this research, and he also gives the remedy. Just as we've worked for years on remedies for drug and alcohol addiction, we need to do this for pornographic addiction. And we need to take up the responsibility to protect our children from these electronic devices. Parameters have to be designed. There's another website called Covenant Eyes, which will help you do that, not only for adults, but for the children most particularly. Now, the young people may not be happy to hear this tonight when you have parameters and rules. I remember as my sister and my brother-in-law were raising their little ones, they had one laptop available to the children, and it was between the kitchen and the living room where my sister or brother-in-law could see it at all times. You don't trust me. Of course, you've heard that, right? From the kids. It's not that we don't trust you. We don't trust the people out on the internet who are after you. You don't have to go looking for the pornography. It comes looking for you, sad to say. That is the darkness that we face. So, we've got to be part of a solution. And Dr. Kleponis has done that, both using the clinical and the spiritual. Being a good Catholic psychologist, he's combined them together in this website that I highly encourage you to look at. Archbishop Shakur would not give up on his dream for peaceful education in these different faiths. Dr. Kleponis would not give up on trying to restore families with their dignity. We must not give up on standing strong and rebuilding the family in our own time. And sometimes it happens in surprising ways. Like that little girl who was surprised by the stars in the heaven. Claire saw these wonderful signs of hope. God is giving us hope, but we must be that hope for the world. We must be that light of Christ. I conclude with a prayer of an unknown soldier fallen in the Civil War that was found on his body as he died in the war. A prayer that reminds us that God sometimes works these wonders in an upside-down fashion. I asked God for strength that I might achieve. I was made weak that I might learn to humbly obey. I asked for health that I might do greater things. I was given infirmity that I might do better things. I asked for riches that I might be happy. I was given poverty that I might be wise. I asked for power that I might have the praise of men. And I was given weakness that I might feel the need of God. I asked for all these things that I might enjoy life. But I was given life that I might enjoy all things. I got nothing I asked for, but everything I had hoped for. Almost despite myself, my unspoken prayers were answered, and I am most richly blessed. Amen.